Man, football off season has not felt like the football off season. It has been a lot of news. I feel like I've seen you in a lot of places covering a lot of stuff. Is it usually this busy for you this time of the year?
No, I think that the NIL and the transfer portal and everything in recent years have totally changed that. It used to be that signing day was on February 5th,
right,
6th, whatever, and everyone signed on that day. And then that kind of quote-unquote ended football season until you got into spring. But no, it doesn't stop now with social media and the transfer portal and who's going where. I mean, really, it's become free agency.
I think people are getting a little tired of the topic, but I can't get you in here without asking just your reaction, being that you were a round Lafayette native. You're from that area of the state, and of course your relationship with the Howards. I mean, you know them very well.
Yeah, and the Beshes too. I mean,
right.
that was the deal. Like I said a year ago, if you would have told me that Jacques Besh, who was the leading receiver on the team in 2021, who represented LSU at SEC Media Days in July,
that's right,
and
more since Beckham.
Yeah, right. And Walker Howard, a 5-star. Both these kids have grown up loving LSU all their lives. I mean, they got pictures of going to Tiger Stadium when they're yay high.
Sure.
And for both of them to both transfer out I wouldn't have believed it a year ago. So as far as Walker Howard goes, I don't know if you can really blame anybody. I mean, you can't expect Brian Kelly to elevate Walker Howard over Jaden Daniels, the guy who was named the team MVP and who's started 4 years of big-time college football, and you can't expect him to elevate him over Garrett Nussmeier, who threw for almost 300 yards in one half against Georgia and looked pretty good in the Citrus Bowl as well. So I don't know if there's anyone really to blame in this. I mean, I think there's a lot of fans that are saying, Walker's running from competition. He doesn't want to compete. He doesn't really love LSU if he hits the eject button this quickly. I'd like to see him stick around. I'm sure Brian Kelly and they all did everything they could to make him stay, but that's not what happened.
Would you be surprised if he landed at Ole Miss?
No. I mean, the Howards are from Mississippi.
Laurel.
Originally.
Yeah.
So that's where their roots are. They're not from Louisiana.
Correct.
And, Lane Kiffin has a lot to sell as an offensive coordinator and as a coach and the offense they run and everything. And, without a doubt, if Walker Howard beats LSU in a game this year, next year, whenever, I mean, you never hear the end of it. But I was driving over here today. I remember hearing, well, TJ Finley's going to Auburn, and, he's going to stick it to LSU, and it's going to – in 2021, they came over here. I think he threw 3 or 4 passes. Bo Nix won that game, and then this past year, I think Finley was injured. So you don't know what's going to happen. I think it's just a case of that's the way college football is now. You're going to be going up against former guys. I don't want to say every week, but it's going to be pretty often.
You were at Simone's statue unveiling on Sunday. That's a cool moment for the university. I think that's one that we'll probably see for a long, long time. It's definitely one for LSU women's basketball that will live on forever. What was that day like?
I've been to 3 statue unveilings, and it by far was a huge crowd. I mean, it was as far as the eye could see, there were people. Now, it was before a game. The team is winning. Everyone was coming in. I think the two of us, we were at the Pistol Pete statue. They did that like on a Monday. We had just come back from SEC Football Media Days in July, and so that was a little different. And then Bob Pettit is up there in age. I think they did that one before the LSU played Florida during the Ben Simmons year, and that was a nice crowd. But this was just amazing. And so, credit to Kim Mulkey. A year ago, I never really thought. I mean, we just didn't think statues to women, to female athletes. It just wasn't something we talked about or thought about. And Mulkey gets here and gets it done relatively, like that, like she's winning, like that. And so it was wonderful to see Simone. I got to talk to Big Sylvia Fowles. Hadn't seen her in a long time. Tamika was there. Tamika's a coach now. She came in. She's like, man, I got to fly out at 2:30. So she wasn't going to miss it. A lot of former players. And, just a great representation of the state and of our city and area. And I think one thing her dad told me, I think I was coming to do your show one day, and I saw her dad outside, and I stopped and chatted with him. He goes, we want to let the kids of South Baton Rouge, North Baton Rouge, wherever know that you can do this too. You can be like Simone Augustus.
Absolutely. So. She was that was the thing about her growing up, is that you could just go see her anywhere. I mean, like, she was always playing pickup, and she was so accessible, and to see her celebrated the way she is it feels so right. It feels like it's.
And look, I went to go do a story the other day on Michaela Williams, who's the number 1 player in the in the country from Louisiana and Shreveport, and she's an amazing player. But still, 2 decades later, I don't think there's anyone been like Simone.
Nope.
She was so explosive. I mean, she was so skinny too. Talked about how she was so thin, but I mean, she could just take a basketball between the legs.
She had it on a yo-yo. It was like she had the ball on a string. She could do whatever with a basketball when she was 14, 15 years old. I'll never forget watching her play in the dungeon in the basement of the Maravich Center versus like high-end level male competition. She went to school with Brandon Bass at Capitol High School, and they would go play pickup down in the dungeon with some of the college guys. Not the college team, but they had players down there, other sports, football players, track athletes. They had people down there. You could play some big-time pickup basketball down there in the summertime.
Yeah.
And she would come in there as a 14, 15-year-old, female. And first off, it's a very intimidating court to walk onto if you're Brandon Bass.
Yeah.
And for her to be so young and walk on it, I mean, she had like the high socks, she had the Chuck Taylors, she had her hair, the braids and she would walk the ball up, going in between her legs, and make people look foolish on this court at like 14, 15 years old. And it was like, it just was different.
Yeah.
It was stuff that you were like, wow, she is going to be a legend. Like, she's going to be a legend. And for Skip Bertman, who at the time, I don't think realized even what he was saying, to call her the biggest recruit in LSU history, to look back on it 20 years from now, 20 years ago, is like, that's spot on. It's almost like an undervalued statement. She was enormous.
Yeah.
Bob Starkey pointed out yesterday, he was here during an interview, her senior season, LSU led the country in road attendance.
Road attendance, right. Yeah. Her signing day is unprecedented. There's never been a female athlete. This was on par with Leonard Fournette or anything like that. The anticipation of what she's going to do, and Pat Summitt sitting in the.
She came out in an orange jumpsuit, didn't she?
Well, not jumpsuit, but there was like an orange hat. And it was a shirt that kind of had stripes of orange on it. And I remember hearing this story about Sue Gunner. About gave me a heart attack when she came out in that wearing that orange. And they all apparently like Nikki Fargas was on that staff at Tennessee, and they were like, we knew. Like, it wasn't that close. Now Simone said, "Oh, it was tight." I mean, to go to Tennessee where it's up and running, and you're going to win a national championship probably, or come to LSU, and I wish they would have won a national championship. It's ironic that the best team she was ever on was blocked by Mulkey in the Final Four.
I know.
With Sylvia and Tamika. I mean, that was a team right there. They were
She had them beat.
Yeah.
They were up 20 at half, weren't they?
It was a big lead, and LSU just didn't make the adjustments. I mean,
remember Tamika walked. They didn't call the walk. They threw the ball into her, and she was panicked because LSU was down 2, and she caught it, and she slid her pivot foot, and it was like the referees were like, I don't want to call it, and didn't call it. And they went down, and they missed the shot, and it was just like, oh, my God. And you kind of felt like, I don't know if they'll ever be this close again.
Yeah.
Because that was the team where you were like,
they're
loaded.
Favorite by far. And then that was the national championship. Mulkey wore the blue outfit, which everyone felt was a big
it was.
To Louisiana Tech. She claims that somebody picked that out for her, and she just
no
wore
doubt
it.
she does.
I had nothing to do with that. I just wore it. And so, there were other trips. I mean, I went all the way out to Fresno, California. The best single game I had ever seen LSU play was when they beat UConn in Fresno. And Tamika Fowles just took it to him. I think it was 73-50 the final. Gino, and that was a famous story. I've told it before. But in the press conference before the game, Bob Starkey had to take over the team for Pokey Chapman, and he coached them all through the tournament. And he said, look, I'm going up against Gino Auriemma. Okay, he's Gino Auriemma. He's better looking than me. He's better dressed than me. He's a better coach than me. And he says all this. So Gino gets up a little bit later, and I repeat everything that Bob Starkey just said. He said, well, you're Gino. You're better looking. You're a better coach. He goes, that's true. That's all true. He goes, but he's got Sylvia Fowles. And that was the difference in the game for sure. And then they went to Cleveland, and then Rutgers just stomped them.
Were you there February in 2003 when they put 16,000 in versus
Yeah,
Tennessee?
I remember there were 2 games that LSU sold out the building against Tennessee. I think the first one they lost, that was what's the girl? It's Kara Lawson?
No, Tasha Butts.
Tasha
Butts that day, they put her on Simone, and she was just a little bit bigger than Simone. And she was kind of shoving her around. I think it was the first time that Simone had kind of been physically.
Yeah.
It wasn't like she could just catch it and go by you, and pull up, like that jumper. No, granted, she had a good game, but she was dealing with something that, like, Tennessee had,
right.
They just had so many players, and Tasha Butts was the one that day that she gave Simone.
Fargus's former assistant for a long time over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they lost one and they won one. But Patrick Wright always told the story, the longtime voice of LSU women's athletics, that Sue Gunner came out before the game and she stood in the tunnel and she looked around when the place was totally full and she had a tear in her eye. Yeah, she cried.
That's right.
And that was a day that, they always reference, and they referenced it again this past weekend, the curtain. The curtain is it's an infamous thing in women's basketball where they dropped a curtain over an entire side of the PMAC because nobody would show up for games. Hey, y'all go sit on the other side to make it look like there's somebody here. And so
it was a real curtain?
Yeah.
Like a legit
It was
curtain,
a purple theater curtain, and they used to
Wow.
take their team pictures in front of it.
Yeah.
Like the Shaquille O'Neal era of
Yeah.
LSU basketball.
Yeah.
If you go see those team pictures, they're in the middle of the PMAC floor, and there's a purple curtain shaded behind
Wow.
them, and that's what
Never
that was
knew
for.
that.
And I think Sue told Patrick, well, guess we don't need that curtain no more. And so, so that was a big day. I remember me and Michael Caldwell, we did it was a hamster ball race. You remember those hamster balls where you got in it and it was like this plastic ball, and I leaped at the end because I was in front of 15,000 people and had adrenaline, and I landed on my side. I about cracked a rib for like a few days. Every time I coughed or moved, it hurt or whatever. But
Did you get to win?
I believe I won. It was very close. It was kind of the tortoise and the hare. Caldwell had me beat by far, and he was like pointing at me and kind of dogging me, and then
Turned
Threw
it
the
on.
ball, pointing at you through the hamster ball thing.
like he jumped at the end. He kind of did one of these. So we'll just say it was a tie.
I can see Cobble doing that.
So
Last one, and you understand this, so there's not a lot of people that you can talk to about this, but the politics that has been stirred up over this Sue Gunner Dale Brown court, which looks like it's going to come down to a vote in the early February.
well, credit to you. You're the first person that mentioned it on any forum. I think I was at SEC Football Championship on the Friday before the game, and I'm in the gym and I'm watching your show, and you brought it up. And so a couple weeks ago when I was driving to Shreveport, I had some time on my hands, so I made some calls to some people, and I had several very revealing off-the-record conversations.
Sure.
No one wants to go on the record with this.
Right.
But it does appear that I think the next LSU board meeting is in February.
Correct.
I've been told, quote, shocked if it doesn't happen. This is happening. Yeah, it's moving in that direction. But then maybe they don't go on the record to screw it up. It does appear that Sue Gunner, there is momentum to get her name on the court with Dale Brown.
Yeah. What do you, because you covered the Dale Brown court story.
Yeah.
And you were in the board meeting. You were there when Collis Temple made his delivery.
There was a thing in July that kind of got it rolling that Tim Brando spoke at. And then there was a thing, it was during football season, because I remember I had a football game that LSU was playing the next day. It was a Friday.
Real quick, Walker Howard just committed to Ole Miss.
I've been staring at you so you'd look at the comments to
But
see.
just keep going because I want you to tell the story.
Hotty toddy. But yeah, and it was a touching thing because John Brady, which we all know,
That's
John
right.
Brady and Dale Brown were oil and water here for many, many years. Sammy Hagar and David Lee Roth, for all you old school, just ruined your show. But anyway, yeah, they were the guy that replaced the guy, and we don't like each other, and blah blah. And John Brady got up there and said this should happen, and you need to make it happen. Jordy Holtberg was there, and Collis, and anyway, but Mary Warner was on the
Yeah.
and she spoke up for Sue
That's right.
and said if you look at the two resumes, and it's been brought up to me that Sue Gunner is in the Naismith Hall of Fame and
She is.
Dale Brown is not.
That's right.
And so, look, I went to those. Those were the first LSU basketball games I ever went to. Chris Jackson, Shaq, superstars, Georgetown in the Superdome, 66,000 fans. I mean, it was always exciting and whatnot. 2 Final Fours, 2 Elite Eights. What Dale Brown did was amazing. But is it obvious, Jordy? Is it obvious to name the court after somebody? If it's Bobby Knight, obviously. If it's Coach K, it's obvious. Dean Smith, down the line. Is it obvious to name the court after Dale Brown? And if you do, then you bring up the discussion of this person also perhaps needs to be on the court. And what happens if Kim Mulkey wins,
right.
2 or 3 national championships in the next decade?
Right, I agree.
Then what do you do? So I don't know. I mean, I don't want to step on anyone's toes, but it looks like it's ironic, isn't it? I mean, this is the same stuff that's been going on since the 80s.
I agree. That's
politics.
This is the most. That's the most disappointing part about it. Is that it feels so old school business of LSU. Like I thought LSU was past this at this point, but politics in South Louisiana is politics in South Louisiana. I don't know if it ever grows up.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it was whether it's the 80s, 90s, 2000s, or 2020s. It's still.
And I want to talk about real quick before you throw me out of here. That Simone even at the press conference said, and I'm really looking forward to seeing LSU play South Carolina and how that game's going to go and blah blah blah. And so it's interesting to me that South Carolina fans who had no interest in any of my social media platforms before Kim Mulkey, or Kim wishes she was the coach Dawn Staley was. Dawn Staley is 10 times the coach that Kim Mulkey is. And when y'all come here, you're going to get destroyed and this and that. And it just speaks to fear. It speaks to you're uncomfortable now,
right.
That the LSU's a threat. They weren't a threat before, and now they're a threat. And that Kim Mulkey has won 44 of her first 50 games as LSU's head coach, which is 88%, Stewie. I went to college. But, is on this clip. And then look how good they are. And then you're going to throw Michaela Williams into the mix next year and all these other – I mean, this thing is like –
Del Rosario, the number 1 post player in the country.
The post player and everything. I mean, this thing is just –
It's a machine.
Yeah.
It's a machine. It feels like they're about to hit like that Tennessee, UConn type run you brought up. Like –
yeah.
Because the haves and the have-nots in women's basketball.
There's a big divide.
There's a huge divide there. And the divide, obviously, is the team with the players combined with a coach like Auriemma, Summit, Mulkey. If you can get that mix, then, it comes down to like a 2-3 horse race. And LSU feels like.
When you watch the women's tournament, it is not unusual to see a 1 seed beat a 16 seed 100-40 or something.
Oh, man.
That never happens in the men's game.
Pummel them.
Yeah, never happens. But, yeah, you're right. And look, South Carolina, objectively, is probably better than LSU. They're probably deeper than LSU. But does LSU have a puncher's chance to go over there? Sure. And the arena seats 18,000, by the way. I've looked it up. I mean, is it going to be 18,000? Sold-out crowd?
I had people walk up to me over the weekend. Mary Alford. From
of course, yeah. I love Mary. Yeah.
Absolutely. She told me they bought tickets. They're going. Like, I mean, and I can't imagine that she is the only one from this basketball community that's supporting women's college hoop down here that's saying, hey, there's not going to be – they're must-watch television right now, Jacques. I mean, Angel Reese she's must-watch entertainment. You know what I mean?
And Dawn Staley is more accomplished than any of us will ever be in this room, without a doubt. Mm-hmm. But even people that admire her, think she's fantastic, there were a few of them that were very taken back by those post-game comments last year. That was an air ball on her part.
Should have been.
And it was just, why? So that definitely plays into this whole thing. I mean,
some of the conversations that have been had in living rooms with recruits that have been intently to get back to Mulkey and LSU. It's like, hey, you want this fight? Okay.
Right.
Mulkey's kept her mouth shut. She's not put anything on the record of this is how we react to this stuff. And she continues to, like you mentioned, I think it's just a sign of fear. I mean, like it's a sign of we are about to get hit with something that
It reminds me of 2019 when the LSU team, the football team, got rolling, and every week I had Crimson Tide.
Yep.
Well, till they beat us, it don't mean nothing.
Right.
Don't mean nothing till you beat us, because maybe they knew that this might be the time they do win,
right.
And so yeah, I mean, and I heard you talking the other day. I think that perhaps they've underestimated Kim as being, she's that older, out of touch, not as hip, not
right.
up with it, and 17, 16-year-old kids are like, we love Kim Mulkey.
absolutely.
And so, Dalton's not going to lose recruits. I mean, they're not going to collapse, all right?
Sure.
But it's going to be much more even fight.
Off the desk the last couple of days. When do we see you back on?
I'm going be there today, anchoring. Okay. The men have a game tonight. I think I may get out to LSU softball's practicing and just open it up for media stuff. And so, yeah, looking forward. This is going to be an exciting spring, Jordy. I mean, spring is kind of my favorite time of year. And, this time of year right now, it's kind of, the sun goes down early, it's kind of sluggish. Man, between the LSU baseball team, what Mulkey's doing, and then spring football. I mean, you're going to have a lot of excitement in the spring, I think.
And you got another signing day coming up. Jacques Doucet from WAFB. He'll be on the desk today. Remember, you can follow him on Twitter. He's a great follow on social media, and he's here every Wednesday with us here on the Jordy Culotta Show.